everyone, and welcome back to another episode of JJ Talks. My name is Jonah and I am once again here with my friend Josh. How you doing?
I am fantastic, seeing as how we just did our first episode, and now we're on number 2.
Yep. And in this episode, we are going to talk about some of the latest transactions and contract talks around the league. So for those that aren't as interested in the Falcons, hopefully there's some interest in you. This is more just general NFL stuff. We're just going to get right to it. Recently, Carlos Hyde signed to the Seahawks for a 1-year deal up to $4 million. What I want to know what you think, Josh, about that deal after, they already have a couple of other backs in that backfield. What do you think about Carlos Hyde going to Seattle?
Well, they kind of have a couple of backs, right? Chris Carson, their 7th rounder, has played pretty well, but he was having a fumbling issue at the beginning of last year. Still seems to be fine. He was getting a little injury prone at the end, but it seems like he's healthy again, and he's Pete Carroll's guy. I had to think of his name first. But yeah, he's Pete Carroll's guy. Pete Carroll loves him. But their first rounder, Rashad Penny, went down with the ACL tear. And from what it looked like, he was kind of explosive up until the injury. So really what they really needed is a veteran guy to come in and just be a backup. They went into playoffs last year, and Marshawn Lynch is beast mode, but he clearly wasn't his same old self. So you still need a veteran guy that still has some sort of leg on him. And Carlos Hyde is that guy. He's drafted by the 49ers, and he's kind of like a journeyman running back at this point now. He went to the Browns, got traded to the Jags. Then he signed with the Chiefs last year, got traded to the Texans, and now he's in Seattle.
Yeah, and it seems like everywhere that Carlos Hyde goes, he's still productive. I mean, I want to say he had close to, if not had, 1,000-yard season this past year with the Texans. He's just been good. Not much of a pass catching threat, but with what the Seahawks want to run, they don't need that as much. They're kind of that downhill running type of football team.
Yeah, I just want to get in your face and pound you.
Right. And I agree with you with the injuries, and I think Rashad Penny, with his big injury, they may wonder, especially considering there's no offseason programs right now with the coronavirus, how healthy is he really? And
currently he's not looking to play up until September right now, is what the recent news was.
Okay. So that makes this Carlos Hyde news, makes a lot of sense. And then with Chris Carson, he actually ended up with an injury, I think like in week 16 or 17 at the end of last season.
Mm-hmm. Which ultimately forced the Marshawn to come back.
Right. So if anything, this is a big depth signing. And if everything's well and both of them are fully healthy, Carlos Hyde is your third back, is one deep running back core.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I mean, talk about a guy that's never great or just over a top talent, but he's good. He's going to get you what you want.
Yeah, and I mean, they got him for cheap. It's only up to $4 million, so it's not like they're breaking the bank for him either.
Nah. If you're going to get a backup running back, Carlos Hyde is about as good as it's going to get.
Right. So I think this is a very good signing for the Seahawks. Just another, weapon for that offense to use. And I think he just fits the system perfectly.
Right. And speaking of good signings, I personally think the Jets signing Joe Flacco was pretty great. After Sam Darnold went down with mono, who gets that in the NFL? Like, how often do you get an injury and it comes up with mono on the injury report? Clearly, they rely on Sam Darnold, and we can question him all they want right now. He's hopefully going to turn into a star, and they clearly needed him. As soon as he came back, they started winning the games.
Yeah, and I think right now, with the way the Jets are, with Tom Brady leaving the Patriots, I think the AFC East is wide open. I mean, I do think it's the Bills. I think they are the most talented team at this point, and it's kind of theirs to lose. But I think the Jets could be a sneaky team to possibly win that division. And if, Sam Darnold was able to take that step forward, then I think they have a lot of potential to do it. And not just bringing in Flacco as an experienced backup, but he's got that starter experience. He's a deep veteran. He's been to the playoffs, been and won a Super Bowl, so he can provide that knowledge to Sam Darnold. And again, it's a 1 year, $1.5 million deal. It's extremely cheap. And if you desperately need, if something were to happen to Darnold for whatever reason, God forbid he gets mono again somehow, you've got a backup that can at least, play for you in a pinch.
Well, I'm just going to go ahead and ask you. Buffalo is obviously the ones betting gods to win the division. But if you're wanting a quarterback for the future, do you want Josh Allen or Sam Darnold? Because I know who I would personally want. But I just want to hear your thoughts.
I think in terms of full intangibles, I really like Sam Darnold. I think he has had kind of a rough start. I'm not a big fan of Adam Gase as a head coach as it is.
Adam Gase, crappy. Pure crap.
Yeah. And I think
50 feet of crap.
I think Sam Darnold has not had a good O-line since he's been there. He's not had very good weapons. And I still think he's done seemingly well. I think Josh Allen right now is on the better team, but I really question Josh Allen's decision-making. I question his accuracy. I think he's got a great live arm, and I think he's got a nice size and a very good mobility. But I think we saw in that wild card round in the playoffs, he just looked lost. And he was making some decisions that you just can't do. And I think long-term, I'll probably take Darnold. It'd be close. But I think I just like the overall measurements of Darnold compared to Allen. And I think he's got a lot to prove this year. But if I'm looking forward to the potential, I think I like Darnold just a little bit more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Like, I personally, from last year, I was high on the Bills going into the season. I even had them going to the playoffs. But I definitely didn't have them being a more than 10-win team. But sure enough, they pulled through. And Josh Allen, while he wasn't the best, he was kind of a part of it. Defense definitely held him in for most games, but he definitely made the plays that he needed to. Like, I think the ultimate comp for Josh Allen is that while he's not exactly the most accurate one, he's definitely a physical guy. And very much kind of like how Big Ben started in Pittsburgh. Ultimately, they made the Super Bowl, and it wasn't really because of his efforts, but he's really grown into what Big Ben is now. He's a Hall of Famer now. But I guess if we're looking at the moment and not just taking guesses, Sam Darnold is the better overall quarterback. And I almost kind of want to revert back on the Bills and pick the Jets as my sleeper candidate this year.
Yeah, it's close. I mean, I think what puts the Bills above the Jets is I think the Bills have the better defense, and also I think management going out and getting Stephon Diggs for that offense, it puts all the pressure now on Josh Allen. Say, hey, now you've got the weapons. I mean, there's no excuse at this point. You've got a decent running game. You've got a defense behind you. I think Darnold even now still lacks the weapons. I know that they drafted Mims in this past draft, but I question if he can be that number one guy automatically. They lost Robbie Anderson. So, and it seems like every single year their receivers just get hurt. So it's a shame, but I do want to see how much, with the addition of a better O-line and a couple more weapons, can Darnold take that step. But I think they have just as much a chance of winning that division heading to the playoffs as the Bills do.
I just wish their head coach wasn't Adam Gase. I mean,
yeah.
How do you have Le'Veon Bell and you hate him and don't want to use him? Like, I understand you didn't want him in his contract, but you have him and he's a great asset, so use him. Like, come on now. Like, anyone other than Adam Gase is going to find a use for Le'Veon Bell.
People forget that, like, just Le'Veon Bell is just a few years back from leading the league in all-purpose yardage and having that one game, I think it was against the Bills when he was with the Steelers, he had, like, 2 rushing touchdowns and 2 receiving touchdowns. He had, like, 200 to 250 all-purpose yards in the game. I mean, he just destroyed, like, a season. And I know fantasy owners, because I had him, he had, like, 50 points. It was ridiculous. But, yeah, I mean, there's weapons there. There's potential there. It's just all got to come together.
One of the best signings has been Jamison Crowder, though. What a great slot guy who's finally coming into his own. Uh, Unfortunately, he did go to Washington, which is just a dumping ground for any kind of talent. And it doesn't, you don't really go anywhere. But what a great landing spot. And I guess if there's anything from an Adam Gase offense, is that he found his next Jarvis Landry. Just he's just an underneath the eye.
Yeah, I mean, he's
You
one of
always
those,
rely on him to get targets and catches.
right. He's one of those big, volume catch kind of guy. He's not exactly a speed burner, but if you need to make, he needs someone to make a catch on third down, he's going to do it. And I think another guy that's like a dark horse guy is Quincy Enunwa. He, ever since coming into the league, I felt like he had the physical traits to be a good receiver. And we've seen flashes, but he always gets hurt. So if he could just stay healthy, and then
I believe
you
he got
got
cut, though, didn't he?
oh, has he? Oh, okay. I mean, maybe he has, but I just remember like back him like there. I don't know. He had a
I
lot
just
of
remember when you
potential.
were upset with me 2 years ago when I picked him up off the waiver wire. but then he got injured, so it didn't even matter.
Yeah. Well, I guess we can move on to from the
About
AFC.
non-signings.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we should probably go into that one. Um, Devontae Freeman, the running back who was cut by the Falcons this season, news came out that he has been having interest in several teams, or been a lot of teams have shown interest in him. And in fact, the Seahawks, before the Carlos Hyde signing, offered Freeman what seemed like a very similar deal to the Carlos Hyde deal, about $4 million for 1 year, and he declined it, wanting more money. And apparently now he is willing to sit out the entire year if he doesn't get the contract he wants. So, what are your thoughts on that whole thing?
Dude, just shut up and take the money. You're a beat up running back. Get your money. That sums up my overall thoughts. As an Atlanta fan, he was great with us. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He was injury prone. He was an offensive dirt cutter who was just dead as far as running backs go. Running backs do not succeed under Dirk Cutter's offense. But you do have some sort of talent left. Could have just taken the deal. I personally think you're better than Carlos Hyde. Look, man, just go find a home and go play.
Yeah, I mean, I think not just how like unproductive he was last year, but I think the constant injuries that he has had throughout his career is definitely limiting him. And if I'm him and I have a chance to go play for a possible contender for 4 million, I'm taking it. And I agree with you. I think Freeman has a lot of value, especially as a pass catching option out of the backfield. I think if anything, he showed that a lot in his 1 year with Dirk Cutter this past year,
Mm-hmm.
that he can really catch it out of the backfield and be a force there. But yeah, he just with the way that people are starting to see running backs and not wanting to give them these big contracts, you're not going to get much more than what you're being offered. So if you have a chance to go make 4 million, just take it.
Right. As we saw last year was a perfect example of Melvin Gordon. Chargers, they love him. They drafted him. They like him a lot. But you're a running back. You have to know that your lifespan in the NFL is just not. It's not long. It's not long term at all. And until the league changes, if they're drafting contracts with running backs, it's just ultimately going to end up being like that. And you got to take your deal. The only one that's going to be able to have that kind of leverage would be Christian McCaffrey and a Le'Veon Bell type. But whenever you're just a really good running back and nothing more than that, you can get replaced by anyone.
Mm-hmm. And I think we even saw with Le'Veon Bell sitting out, he didn't even get the contract that he was expecting. So
Right, but he still did end up winning in the end. Like as far as I'm concerned, I know a lot of people want to counter say he didn't get what he wanted, but he's one of the highest paid running backs.
yeah, I guess my counter argument would be like one, he's been with the Jets. He has not been on a contender for so many years, and you can tell he's been underutilized. And of course, not many expected, the whole Adam Gase situation. But I don't know. He's been on a pretty, not exactly the best of situations. And
Mm.
yes, he's getting his money, but in a productive sense, it hasn't really worked out either. But if you look at
Oh,
other,
definitely not. But money wise, he's got what he wanted, kind of mostly.
sort of. But I think even looking at other, the Cowboys paid Ezekiel Elliott, the Rams paid Todd Gurley, and we can see, especially with the Todd Gurley contract, these long-term contracts are just not working with running backs because they're just one injury away from just that's it. Like it's
Tanking
over.
your home cap space.
Yeah, and I think Zeke's contract is like 6 years, 90 million, and even last year he was not very productive. I mean, he was all right, but he wasn't worth that top dollar. So
Oh yeah, by far.
and there's only so much that running backs can do anyways. I mean, they run the ball and they can catch it out of the backfield, but they're not someone that's going to be the equivalent of a Julio Jones or the equivalent of a Bobby Wagner or some of these top tier and other positions that are so much more valuable. It's like if you have an opportunity to either pay DeAndre Hopkins, Aaron Donald, or Todd Gurley, who you picking? Well, it should be clear answer because two of those positions are so much more valuable than a running back is at this point.
Mm-hmm. And you can see that as far as teams that go to Super Bowls or contend in the playoffs, they generally don't have the leading rusher on their team.
Right. I mean, if you look at like a team like the Patriots, I don't remember the last time they've had really a lead back. Period. They kind of go by running back committee. If we look at last year, the two teams that went in, the 49ers, I mean, Raheem Mostert came on near the end, but they still kind of went through committee. And
well, if you were playing fantasy, you had no idea who was going to produce out of the 49ers backfield. Was it going to be Tevin Coleman? Was it going to be Raheem Mostert? Was it going to be Jeff Wilson? You just
Matt
don't
Breida.
know. Is Jared McKinnon going to mysteriously come back from injury and then do it? Could have happened.
Yeah, and then if you look at the reigning Super Bowl champions, the Chiefs, we always knew that Damian Williams had it, but you could tell throughout the regular season, some games he went off, some games he did nothing, and then all of a sudden in that Super Bowl he just went berserk. So it just depends on, like, you can tell the top teams that go to the playoffs and that compete regularly, they don't pay top dollar for these running backs. And it shows that if you can save that money, put them elsewhere, and go more by committee and not have to rely on one guy, it works out.
And I know a kind of argument to be like this would be because I was thinking about using this kind of argument, but I went ahead and thought that back. But the only example I could think of a recent memory would be the Tennessee Titans with Derrick Henry last year going to the AFC Championship, kind of on his back. But even then, it wasn't until Ryan Tannehill came in that they came in and actually started winning games. So you could argue the whole Derrick Henry thing, and it's kind of true, but it wasn't until they got Ryan Tannehill down that they were actually going anywhere.
That's true, and it also doesn't help the Titans that like they didn't have much of a passing attack at all. Even to this point, like I know they just paid Ryan Tannehill a lot of money. I'm not a big Tannehill believer. I don't think that.
Says the Titan fan.
Look, I do really like the Titans. If I had to pick an AFC team, it would be the Titans. They're my second favorite team. However, like not saying that I liked Mariota more than Tannehill because I didn't. I don't really like either of them. But Tannehill has not proved much to me. And I'm sorry, if you put any other running back in that backfield, the Titans are not going to the AFC Championship. I love the run they went on. It was a magical season because who in the right mind had them going and facing the Chiefs in the AFC Championship?
And they were leading them at one point.
They were. It's fantastic. And I honestly, no joke, I think if they had any semblance of an offense outside of Derrick Henry, they could have won that game. But, it's and I understand them also not wanting to pay Derrick Henry because of this whole, paying running backs thing. However, if you had to put down these two people and show their stats, and player A was Ryan Tannehill, player B was Derrick Henry, and you say who deserves their money more, it's clearly Henry. But because of his position, he's not going to get paid, and yet Tannehill did. It's a rough situation.
Very rough. But you know what's also rough? Not knowing who your quarterback is going to be in 2020. Just like the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, we know it's one or the other, but it's definitely not 100%.
Yeah, the Cowboys are in a very interesting situation. So they obviously put on the exclusive franchise tag on Derek Henry. Wow, Dak Prescott, which is paying about $31.4 million, and apparently, based off of reports, he is wanting top quarterback dollar. He wants 40 to 45 million per year. He wants this crazy amount, and it seems like the Cowboys are just not willing to go that high. Well, then they decide, hey, let's bring in Andy Dalton, and they bring him in for a 1 year, up to $7 million deal. But if he backed up all 16 games, apparently it'd be a 1 year for $3 million. So you got him for really cheap. And say what you want about Andy Dalton, but he has been a serviceable quarterback at minimum in his time at Cincinnati. So it makes it interesting. What do you think will end up out of this situation? What do you think the Cowboys are going to go with this?
Man, I honestly don't know because I'm kind of going back and forth right now. One thing, like first of all, I think Andy Dalton is a franchise quarterback, and I'm not going to sit here and say like he's great or anything, but the Bengals as a franchise are just absolutely dysfunctional. They're garbage. They're a dumpster fire. But somehow, Andy Dalton with the Bengals made it to the playoffs many times. And obviously didn't win, but he's clearly a quarterback that can play the position very well. He was on an MVP type season before he went down with his was it a thumb injury, I think, in 2015. So, like, I believe the Cowboys did sign a quarterback, and as far as the market went at that time, they signed a guy that could come in week one if necessary, and even play up to potential and sign another contract at the end of the year if Dak wasn't their quarterback. So I believe they're just kind of playing chess and checkers with each other. And either way, Dallas is going to win because they're going to end up having a franchise quarterback. But if I was guessing right now, I think a deal does eventually get done. If not, it'll be on the franchise Dak, and Dak will be the quarterback week one.
That's what I want to go with is going to happen. I do think that the Cowboys organization loves Dak Prescott, thinks of him to be their franchise leader. Here's what I would like to see happen, though. And as wild as this would be, I would just love it. I want to see Prescott get traded. I want
Oh, yeah,
to
definitely.
see, yeah, I want him to go.
That'd be fun. All trades
Yeah,
are fun.
absolutely. And I think that honestly, you could probably get some good, like, value, probably some picks out of it. But if I'm looking at this, uh, you can say what you want about Dak Prescott. He's had a good career thus far. Got Offensive Rookie of the Year his first year, made it to the
Which shouldn't
playoffs.
have even gotten, but different argument.
Yeah. He's got some couple playoff wins, I think, under his belt, or he's just got one. I don't really know.
Yeah,
Um,
just one.
just one. Okay. So he's got a playoff win under his belt. He's been to the playoffs. He's got some experience at this point. But if you look at Dak Prescott and how he's performed, specifically last year, he doesn't win the big games. And say what you want about the team, I think everyone would agree that the Cowboys are a very talented team, but anyone that knows football knows talent doesn't win you football games. And
Mm.
you can say what you want. Maybe it's Jason Garrett. Maybe it's just the dysfunction of the organization as a whole. Whatever the reason is, Dak Prescott had a very prime opportunity this past year to make a statement to say, hey, I'm deciding not to sign yet because I want to prove myself and show that I am the guy. And they end up 8-8 when you have a prime opportunity in Philadelphia facing this battered Eagles team that's got like no weapons at this point, and you can't even score a touchdown against them. I mean,
Yeah, I feel like battered is almost an understatement because that team was absolutely devastated by injuries, and that talented Cowboys team didn't even put up a fight.
yeah. I mean, I remember watching that game, and from the get go, I didn't think the Cowboys even had a shot because it just, for whatever reason, maybe it was a bit of spirit in the fight. I mean, it definitely wasn't a talent difference because on paper, the Cowboys should have ran over the Eagles like they did earlier in the season, but they just couldn't do anything. And I think that shows that Prescott, I mean, you got Amari Cooper, you got Gallup, you got Zeke, you got to make it happen. You got to make a play. And
You even had Jason Witten return to come help you.
right, and you can argue about how good Witten is at this point. He's super slow, but I mean, he can still be a red zone threat. It didn't happen. So
Well, he's
I
a better football player than analyst.
you are so true, so right. Um, so it's I question, um, his Prescott's worth. Do I think he can be a franchise quarterback? I do think he can be one. Do I think he's worth 40 million? No.
Oh
So
heck,
if I'm the Cowboys, um, I'm looking at this and I'm just looking, okay, we've currently got a potential franchise quarterback in Andy Dalton who I think could come in and with all the weapons that they've got, they drafted CeeDee Lamb in the first round to add to that offense. They got, that still got a solid O line. Andy Dalton could come in and produce right away, I believe. So I'm thinking, you got a chance. I mean, at worst, he's going to be making $7 million. Trade Prescott, try to get some picks, and just when you got the chance, just do it now and go. I mean, there's several teams that I think would love to have Prescott. I mean, I could see the Patriots possibly making a move, if they depending on what they really think of Jarrett Stidham. Uh,
which is, I think is pretty obvious. That's not high. I don't care what they say. Belichick was willing. Well, different argument. I'll postpone that.
So I would love to see Prescott traded personally, but if I had to go realistically, I do think he's probably the starter week 1. I do think a deal will eventually get done. But if it does get done, I do think that'll have some extreme ramifications for the salary cap. I just, they just paid Amari Cooper top dollar. They've still got an O-line that is extremely expensive. They just paid Zeke top dollar. If they try to pay Dak top dollar, I don't see how you're going to be able to make any other pieces on that team. And I truly think that if you're spending 35 to 40 to 45 against the cap every year for Dak Prescott, that will have huge ramifications on your team. I would not suggest it, but with how much they seem to love Dak Prescott, I could definitely see it happening.
It's weird. It's kind of almost like how we're viewing running backs right now. Because when you had Dak on this rookie contract with all these pieces around him, fantastic, great. It's definitely worth the price. It's the value. It's there, right? But now these pieces are getting older. These pieces are also young and looking for their contracts as well. The O-line was great and is highly paid, but now the best part of it is now retired now. And whenever he was down with injury, you could see there was definitely a decline in the O-line play, and not just from the O-line, but from Zeke as well last year and Dak himself whenever they needed him most. So ultimately, what you're left with is this. I'm going to say running back, but I really mean like Dak himself. But you just left with this guy who is just at best good. He can be a winner, but he's definitely not the guy that can take you over the top. He's not talented enough to do that. He doesn't throw the ball well down the field. It's just he's good. He's there, but you're honestly just better off just taking chance on someone with a higher ceiling or more potential.
Yeah, and I think at the time that they drafted him and came in, they immediately had that 13-3 year, top seed in the NFC. That in the next like 2 or 3 years, I think that was their window because
Oh yeah,
they had Zeke I mean, they picked him up really early, but still he's on his rookie contracts. That's cheap. They got Dak Prescott in like the 4th round, I believe, so obviously that's really cheap. They got all these other younger pieces they haven't had to pay yet, and it's very reminiscent of the Falcons with their Super Bowl year. They had Deion Jones, Keanu Neal, Grady Jarrett, Devondre Campbell, all these pieces specifically on defense that were so cheap that, hey, you have time before you have to make them all pay and ruin your cap. Bring in a couple pieces. They also made that trade the Cowboys did for Amari Cooper to give him a weapon outside of Des Bryant when they let go of him. So then you have all these pieces. Hey, let's go compete for a championship. They couldn't do that. And I think they're starting to get to the point now where you can't pay everybody. You're going to have to get rid of somebody. You saw that last year, their corner, that went to the Dolphins. They couldn't pay him. So that makes you wonder how good is their secondary. Their safety play is still interesting. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting to see how they can compete this year.
Does this almost seem like the Rams kind of? Like obviously not as extreme, but just like as far as like contract issues are going.
Yeah, I think
they should be better than what they are.
It's funny because I think the Cowboys, Rams, and even the Falcons, I feel like are all kind of in that same spot. All these pieces that they put together and the contracts they put together, it seems they got the talent, they just can't put it on the field. And now all these contracts of the big money that they're having to pay for these people, again, you can't pay everybody. So now they're starting to feel it toward the back end of those contracts.
Mm-hmm.
And after you're having to pay everybody.
I almost feel like Jerry might be looking at the Rams and how quickly they were to sign Jared Goff to that absolutely atrocious contract. It might have been they could see it themselves as getting ahead of the curve and getting ahead of the salary cap expanding upwards, but it's very clear that they are definitely regretting that kind of contract, and I would bet that they're going to be looking to rework it at some point down the line, and maybe that's why they're fearing signing Dak, just because he's just good.
Yeah, and it's definitely like you said, he's just good. I mean, he has potential to be great. He has potential to be really bad, depending on the game. He's really just kind of an average quarterback when you just kind of look at him. And with what he should have been able to accomplish with the pieces, he just hasn't been able to. And you got to wonder. I mean, Patrick Mahomes is going to be looking for a contract very soon. Deshaun Watson too, and I mean, Patrick Mahomes will probably reset the market. So then, if you decide to have Prescott play out his contract on this franchise tag and you don't re-sign him yet, and then Mahomes gets signed sometime during the season, well, then you're kind of stuck because Prescott's probably going to want as much as Mahomes. So
Mm-hmm.
I think where you're at now, trade him, get your value, or if you are going to resign him, do it as soon as possible before Watson, Mahomes, and all these other quarterbacks get paid.
I'm of the belief that teams will tell you what they think about their pieces, and obviously, right now, quarterbacks. If I was talking about the Patriots right now, uh, there was at a point where they were ready positioned to move off of Tom Brady and go to Jimmy Garoppolo, but now, just this offseason, they were trying to re-sign Tom Brady, which tells me they just don't believe in Jarrett Stidham at all. And it's not like he just out there; he's been under the wing. So I already know off the bat they obviously don't trust Jarrett Stidham like they did Jimmy Garoppolo, where at that point they were looking to move off of Tom, but now they wanted to sign him again. I just don't believe that. But with Dallas right now, I don't believe you would franchise tag your quarterback if you actually believed him. If you believe in your pieces, you sign them. You don't wait. You don't franchise tag them.
Yeah, I think with the whole franchise tag, like obviously some contract situations. I mean, even the Falcons had this last year with Grady Jarrett. They tagged him, but
Mm-hmm.
as long as you can get a contract done before July 15th, before that franchise tag deadline, then I think you're fine because obviously some contracts take a longer amount of time. So I can understand it in that regard. In terms of the Patriots with Brady and Stidham, like I definitely don't think they believe in Stidham as much as they did Jimmy G because, like you said, they were trying to. Belichick, I truly believe, did not want Jimmy G traded. I think they really wanted him to be the guy going long term. With
Mm-hmm.
now though, maybe they did try to make an offer, because I think Robert Kraft was like Brady was like a son to him, so I think he more than Belichick wanted him around. But I think the writing was on the wall that Brady was going to leave and go somewhere. I don't. I think most people
Mm-hmm.
agreed that the Patriots was not going to be where he was going to be playing in 2020. So I think with where we are now, if the Patriots would have either signed someone like a Cam Newton or drafted a quarterback in the draft, I could see them not believing in Stidham as much. But I mean, currently, the only quarterback they've got that would even compete with Stidham is Brian Hoyer. So I think that they're going to at least give him a shot and see what happens. And worst comes to worst, they end up not doing so well. And heck, you could see them with Trevor Lawrence next year in the draft, which would be insane.
Well, that's the thing is that I believe they don't believe in him, but I believe that's the whole part of the plan about trying to get Trevor Lawrence or Justin Fields.
Yeah, it'd be crazy for sure. Just another, like, I mean, I'm not a big, draft analysis. So I know Lawrence and Fields are like the top two prospects right now, but we still, you could be a top prospect and not be this fantastic player that you're expected. I mean, I remember so many people were thinking Johnny Manziel was going to be the next coming of Jesus in football, and we see where that ended up. So, you never know. But it's if Lawrence or Fields is who everyone thinks they will be, just for them to end up with the Patriots and then they end up in another 15-year-long dynasty, that would just be insane. And disappointing because I think most people, I'm sorry, Patriots fans, we're all sick of the Patriots. I think that's very safe to say at this point.
This is gonna be a nice change.
Yeah.
But I think an obvious handling of the mantle happened this past season. I think it was ultimately we knew the New England dynasty would end, but now it's the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, I think they're definitely the, long term, they could be the next dynasty. And I will say, just kind of ending on this, and I'll ask you this as well. Most people had the writing on the wall, like I said earlier, that the Brady and Belichick, duo was about to break off. And now you've got Brady in Tampa, a very good coach, a lot of weapons around him. And you got Belichick, who I think is sitting back right now like, look, and I think both Brady and Belichick will say the same thing. We want to win without the other person. I think Brady's want to say, I want to show that I can win without Belichick. And I think Belichick wants to show I can win without Brady. So with Belichick, if you could see, the Patriots after losing all these free agents they did in the offseason with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback and somehow go and make a playoff run and end up in the Super Bowl again, I think this is a way for Belichick to really cement his legacy as one of the greatest football coaches at all time, and then a chance for Brady to cement his legacy. I mean, most people already say he's the most accomplished, if not the GOAT. It would be very interesting to see, can Belichick specifically, I think most people think Brady can do very well, but can Belichick, after losing all these pieces, can he still make the Patriots a contender?
Well, I guess we'll see, huh? I do have one question for you before we end this, but I know we didn't plan it. But is there a game currently at 2020 that you're most looking forward to? And I'll go ahead and start off and just say that the one I'm looking forward to is the Packers and Bucks, October 18th. Just seeing an NFC game between Brady and Rodgers, that's just gonna be amazing. It's currently going to be played in Tampa, but I can't wait to see that game.
I agree with you. I think, Brady, you said it's in Tampa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that'll be a very interesting game, because I think most people will say the Packers are a lot, more improved, but I think also some people would say that maybe, I think they won like 7 of 8 one-score games this past year, and they went 13-3.
Yeah, that never translates very well.
Right. So how good are they really? I think that'll be a very telltale sign of, hey, we're still contenders. I got probably 2 different ones. I think, and this happens twice, but I think Breeze versus Brady is going to be great. 2 of the all-time greats going at it. Because I think most people say either the Saints or the Bucks. One of those 2 is going to win the division this upcoming
What a great
season.
way to start the year.
Right. So I think seeing both of those matchups is going to be great. If I had to pick one, and I don't know what week this is, but I'm fairly certain it happens. Saints versus 49ers.
Oh, God, yes. Rematch of the best game last year?
Oh, yeah. That game last year was fantastic. George Kittle went off in that game. I can remember that last, going into field goal range where he had, his face mask nearly ripped off, and he's just dragging tackles for another, 10 to 15 yards. That was phenomenal. I think that was a great game, and I'd be looking forward to seeing a rematch of that one.
All right. Well, I guess it's going to end it for us today.
Yeah, it's been nice, talking some more football with you.
Yep. I hopefully get to see you sometime soon, once quarantine ends.
Yeah, hopefully. All right. Well, thanks everyone for tuning in. This has been JJ Talks, and we will see y'all next time.